When it comes to bad financial decisions, most regular upper teens and 20-somethings spend their money on games they never play or way too much liquor. I decided to spend mine flying halfway across the country a couple of times a year with no financial buffer in case something was to go wrong. But I wouldn't trade it for the world. Hey y'all, it's Mex. So today I wanted to reflect on some more cons and was thinking of doing a tier list, but that's only assuming I can remember every detail of every con I've been to. The number is 31, by the way, with 32 coming the first weekend of October. Actually, I wrote this before CFF had the rug pulled out from under them with the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. I hope everybody makes it out okay, and I hope everyone is safe. Housing emergency response personnel is definitely far more important considering the circumstances and the sheer scope of what's going on right now. Those on the outside don't know how bad this was. It was bad. Let me just add a little side note off script here. Carolina Fur Fair is probably the most cursed convention I have ever seen. The universe just does not want this convention to happen. I mean, out of its 5-year existence, it has happened as scheduled twice, and has only happened as scheduled with no major incident going on once. It is just so weird that every single year something goes catastrophically wrong in the world to prevent this convention from happening. Anyways, so yeah, 31 conventions. That number may sound slightly nuts until I add the fact that I've been going to cons nearly 14 years. So let's try this. My 4 favorite convention experiences and my 4 least favorite. This is just from my own experience, so don't consider this a review of the con exactly. And also understand I'm digging up a lot of this from memory, since unfortunately a lot of the photos and videos taken from the event have been lost to time and deleted Twitter accounts. Also, we have memberships now, and if you become a $1.99 member, you get to see these videos 2 days before anyone else. And you get these cute little emotes too. So anyways, let's begin. FWA has always been a hit or miss con for me. Spoiler alert, a lot of my experiences boil down to my own mental health. Trust me, I have a lot of mental healths. Anyone who's been to more than 1 or 2 cons is definitely familiar with the fact that cons can be really busy. You know, making tons of plans and trying to fulfill at least most of them. And then there's times where you feel overwhelmed by it all. It took me like 10 cons to finally find the right balance, and I still mistakenly overbook myself even to this day. Furry Weekend Atlanta 2018 was the perfect balance of a busy con. And what can I say? I might be self-aggrandizing here a little, but why would I not be biased towards a con where I achieved a dream or two of mine? Most of the weekend was, of course, dedicated to my attempt to debut my dance crew in the competition. And not only did we get closing act, then get validated with the win, but a lot of people cite this as one of the more memorable large dance groups in the furry fandom. And those compliments give me fucking life. Hook up an IV of praise and validation to me. That's my kink. Other than that, at this con, I just felt a sense of belonging, more so than I can really say for almost any other con. And that's why it's my number 4 best convention experience. Man, I used to be so young, so energetic. I wanted to do everything all at once, and recently I went to a con that made me painfully aware of my age. Look, yes, I had a great time. I got to spend a ton of time with friends, but look, we roomed up in the Aloft, which was over a half-mile from the con space. And yeah, it had that shuttle, but I never happened to catch it, so I just walked each time. There were times during the con I'd end up having to miss events or even the rave because I just couldn't find the energy to get back to the con space. And even when I was there, crowds. The crowds. It was the first time I felt truly CU Space Cowboy levels of overwhelmed at a con. And of course, this is a natural thing to expect with a large con. I don't fault MFF at all for any of this. And hey, the King Harkinian cosplay was pretty funny, not gonna lie. And I made both the dance comp and Floor Wars cuts, so that alone has to be a top 5 con experience, right? Right? So the last, I'd say, 2 years, I've been quite public about the idea that smaller cons vibe better with me than big ones. 10 years ago, I had no limit. I loved big cons, but that was when a big con was barely 5,000 attendees. I've since found my limit. So when I told people I was going to a con 2,000 miles from me in the middle of nowhere in a different country, people started raising eyebrows. But guys, just let me cook. This con felt like a mid-2010s megaplex in all the right ways. Warm and homey with just enough activity to not feel dead. And man, this was definitely party con. Every night there was just just some goofy, random themed party going on. Thursday night had a SpongeBob party, if that's any indication. And it's been a long time since I've gone to a con looking forward to meet over a dozen people I'd never met in real life. We also spent quite a bit of time outside the con space as well in the West Edmonton Mall, especially Monday since my flight was at nearly midnight, so I had to kill time. And on Friday I got to go on a little hike to Walmart to get myself a belt since I'd forgotten my fursuit belt at home. And while the outside was a little smoky because of the wildfires, I'm happy to have this be my first taste of Canada. Also, the 30% discount on conversion rate makes this con cheaper to attend than FWA for me, so that's definitely a good selling point. When you've been to as many cons as I have, and have been going to them as long as I have, it becomes hard to tell your 10th favorite from your 20th, which is why I chose bottom and top 4. Falls out easy, nice even number, doesn't make the script too long while I'm fighting through the pain of YouTube creative burnout. Speaking of burnout, Megaplex 2019 is a hard one to justify as a bad con, because it wasn't, outside of my head. But at this con, my psych had just started me on a med that wasn't exactly agreeing with me to combat my anxieties and panic issues. So let's make a scale. This side is completely content, relaxed, not a problem in the world. And the other side over here is paranoid and anxious. I was somewhere over here. The entire con I was having full body shakes and tremors from the medication. I was constantly paranoid I'd fall into another derealization episode. Then add on the fact that I was trying to do the dance competition through hard burnout that I was ignoring. I was so obsessed with chasing another play, pause, rewind and writing my own legend that I forgot to see what's really important. And that was spending time with my friends and my at the time partner who lived far away from me. Like, I didn't want to admit that I was disappointed that we didn't place in this competition. I was offended by how we were segued in. I was becoming a person I hated, and this is where it all started to collapse in on me. I wasn't a part of something bigger than myself. I was trying to be someone bigger than myself. Apart from good quality time with friends, the best takeaways I still have from this con are the floor wars and the music video I made right after, which I still consider probably the best music video I've ever made.
A pretty spring day.
Fursuit go-karts. The only BLFC I've ever been to, this was a con I'd had a bullseye on for a few years, similar to Furry the last couple. BLFC set an all-time, at the time, record for furry convention debut with 704 attendees in its first outing, putting it at the time 14th. For perspective, that record is now held by, I believe, Denver with over 2,000 attendees in their first outing. Scratch that, AFC in California debuted with 3,533 attendees just last week upon writing this, putting it 13th. By the way, 704 attendees nowadays would put you as the 68th most attended in-person furry convention. Holy fucking shit. BLFC was a phenomenal experience just because the venue kicked ass with a casino on the mezzanine level and a mall on the basement level with easily accessible food all over the place. The weather was fantastic and mild despite it being hot everywhere else in the country at the time, and there was always something to do. Get bored? Walk down the block to the go-kart track and do karts in fursuit. This con was also home to my first non-homemade fursuit experiences. I got to roam around in my friend Optic's fursuit for a few hours, and let me tell you, to get stopped every few seconds for a photo was such a great and welcome contrast over never being asked it while wearing my homemades. Well, yes, as was the norm, there was one or two backhanded comments about my own suit throughout the event. That's a can of worms for a different day. The mid-2010s was a very cynical time in the fandom, admittedly, but that didn't spoil the fun. BLFC 2017 survives the test of time, and it is fondly remembered. There are a few rules when it comes to cons. Don't make yourself go when you cannot mentally do it, and don't make yourself go when you cannot financially do it. So, let's say for shits and giggles, you managed to break both of those rules. PDFC was the amalgamation of trying to power through burnout for 2 years straight. Total mental collapse. My entire week of Phoenix was marred by a severe bout of depression, and not the I'm a little sad and don't know why dark cloud looming over my head depression. I'm talking about I need to constantly justify to everyone why I'm feeling sad, but it's not making me feel any better kind. Not to mention this con was like small. Like, I'm cool with small cons, but this felt very much like an event with more space than attendance. It definitely had its fun moments though. Some of the parties were honestly amazing, and it had its share of great memeable moments. Sadly, a lot of these photos and videos are lost to time. I'm doing my best here with what I got. This was the first con I truly was not happy to be standing backstage about to go out for dance comp. And despite getting to share the stage with my partner for the first time, nothing was helping how I was feeling. feeling. Not to mention 3 weeks before this con, I was writing a budget that was in the red. I had just defaulted 3 credit cards since being unemployed for a month and a half after getting laid off from my dream job. And then I was told shortly after that by somebody I did remote work for that I'm a bad editor. So I was coming into this con having experienced some of the worst challenges of my life, both mentally and financially. A con was not a good idea. But that's not to say this con didn't have a few bright moments. I remember going up to South Mountain with my partner and a few friends, and that was a really good time, and I'm glad we got to do that. And I know I was surrounded with love throughout this con, but in this moment, my brain was just ready to nope out of the fandom for a little bit. 2022 felt like a year of rebuilding. Rebuilding myself, my love for the fandom, my connections and friendships, and making peace with my place in the world. All of that culminated in a newfound love for my old hobbies. And while Anthrocon 2022 was a great con and certainly worth the 9-year wait from my last AC, it was still a work in progress. It wasn't a perfect weekend.
Oh my god!
Furry Weekend Atlanta has always been such an oddball con for me. The first 2 years I attended were marred with circumstances outside of my control and trying to do far too much, but never has everything gone just so perfect at a con than this one. Hell, you can make a case that the elevators sucked. I won't argue with that. You can make a case that parking was kind of nightmarish and more expensive than I remembered. I won't argue with that. But can I just have this one? After 12 years of wearing homemades, I finally got a suit head I could wear without nonstop judging my own work. I got to meet and hang with a ton of folks I've been dying to finally meet, and I finally put out a dance competition solo performance I could say I was 100% proud of with no regrets.
That was the point. Oh yeah, well here's my squishy ravioli.
Did you know?
It was truly a magical weekend that I did not expect to go as perfectly as it did. Everything just worked. Now imagine the polar opposite. FWA is more flip-flop with me than any other con, and no other con has such a wide range of reactions from me. So every other con I've been to more than a couple of times has a few mid-years, cons that aren't the best or the worst that you've ever been to. Not FWA. Every FWA I've been to is either top 10 or bottom 10, and yes, FWA 2016, consider that one a borderline bottom 5, by the way. What is it about FWA that gives it this stark dichotomy? Well, I think that goes into how much emotional importance I place into it. Consider that FWA is probably the premier dance con, so I'm always wanting to bring my best, and I'm always going to be disappointed if I don't bring my best. And, I guess you could also just chalk it up to whether or not the spring's been going good for me mentally. See, in 2023, I was just happy to be back involved with the fandom after a 2-year hiatus and still giddy off my Anthrocon comeback tour, and I was looking forward to my first true post-COVID con. 2015, however, I was on a 3-week time crunch to lead a dance crew of people I idolized in the dancer fur community, despite being just 8 months removed from my first ever finals. Yeah, I bring this up every so often. Ask any of the crew members from For a World Order and they'll tell you I recite the story a lot. But let's be real, rose-colored glasses. I look at the good that came out of it. But you want a stressful con experience in the moment? There you go. The entire weekend was spent drilling our dance, only to have it just be presentable on stage. Then the icing on the cake was when we were announced as 3rd place of 3 acts. Even Sunday wasn't great, as I entered a Mario Kart tournament just to unwind and forget the weekend, only to discover later it was Mario Kart 8 and not Wii, and I had to drop out because I didn't have Mario Kart 8. Apart from my semifinals run in Floor Wars on Friday, the only positive takeaway I can say was both great in the moment and holds up years later were the heart-to-heart conversations from late Saturday night on the 10th floor with other dancers and con-goers, just bonding with each other, improving those relationships. We were up until daybreak, just opening our hearts with one another, which really did give me something to salvage from an otherwise awful weekend. Memberships. We have memberships! But what does it mean to ship a member? It means you're pretty cool, TBH. Does anyone have a birthday in December? Well, next December you'll turn 1 year older and Patreon will turn stupid. With Patreon deciding it's in their best interest to commit Sudoku by eliminating their pay-per-creation model, I've decided to restructure over here on YouTube with memberships. It's easier for me to manage and probably easier for you to get the perks. You get these cute little emotes and the ability to see all these videos early with additional perks just like I have on my Patreon, such as access to a Telegram server, ability to influence my next topic, all the way up to guaranteed slot and collab videos, and the highest tier will get you the ability to request 2 short videos per year from me directly. Anyways, help support the channel by becoming a member, and if you're not able to make a monthly commitment, no sweat. I have tip links in the description as well, but hey, I completely understand if you're not able to financially contribute right now though. No biggie, just leave a comment, like, share, and subscribe to help my channel grow. Definitely share over Twitter. I do not currently have a presence there and could use any traction I can get. Share in the comments what your favorite and least favorite con experiences were and why. And thank you everybody for watching this whole video to the end. I hope you really vibed with what I was going over here and what I was talking about. And until next time, take it wheezy.